I had waited for this day for so long. My son, Daniel, was finally getting married. I could hardly believe it. All those years of raising him, guiding him through life's ups and downs, and now he was marrying the woman he loved, the woman he'd chosen. I watched him as he stood at the altar, looking handsome in his tuxedo. My heart swelled with pride. It wasn't just his wedding, it felt like my own, too. I glanced at his bride, Emily. She was standing next to him, her smile radiant, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She always seemed so distant around me, polite but not warm. I had tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself that maybe it was just nerves or the pressure of the big day. But deep down, I had always wondered if something more was simmering beneath the surface. As the ceremony progressed, I caught brief moments of joy from Daniel. He had always been a mama's boy, and I couldn't help but think that no matter how much he grew, he'd always be my little boy. My heart ached as I thought about how things would change, how I'd have to share him now. "Mom, are you okay?" Daniel's voice broke my reverie. He smiled at me from across the room, his eyes twinkling as he gestured to the dance floor. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little emotional, that's all." I smiled back, trying to hold it together. "You look so happy." "Of course I am. It's our day." His grin was infectious, and for a moment I could pretend that everything was perfect. The reception started, and everyone gathered around the tables. Laughter filled the air, the sound of glasses clinking and plates being set down. I didn't notice right away when Emily slipped away from the group, but the next moment I felt a firm hand grab me by the arm. Before I could react, there was a sudden force pushing my face directly into the wedding cake. My world went black for a split second as frosting splattered across my face. I blinked, struggling to regain my senses. I wiped my face, my heart racing, the cake now smeared across my cheek. The room fell silent, all eyes turning toward me. I looked up, expecting some kind of apology, but there was nothing. Emily stood there, a smirk playing at the corner of her lips, her eyes cold as she looked at me. "Emily, what the hell was that?" I managed to choke out, my voice trembling with both anger and disbelief. She didn't flinch. Instead, she tilted her head, her smile widening. "What? You didn't think I was going to let you ruin everything, did you?" Her voice was calm, almost too calm, and I could feel my blood start to boil. My mind was a blur, trying to process what had just happened. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. It was as if she had knocked the air out of me, and I couldn't catch my breath. I glanced over to Daniel, hoping for some support, but he was standing by the bar, chatting with friends. He hadn't seen a thing. "Mom, what happened?" He finally came over, his eyes widening as he saw me standing there covered in cake. I swallowed, my throat tight. "Your wife just shoved my face into the cake, Daniel." He froze for a moment, his face blank. Then he glanced at Emily, who stood behind me, still looking as calm as ever. "Emily, did you?" "She deserved it," Emily cut in, her voice smooth and confident. "Your mother has been acting like she owns this day, as if it's all about her." I couldn't let her keep making this all about herself. I couldn't believe my ears. How could she say that in front of everyone? My son didn't say a word. He just looked at me like he didn't know how to handle the situation, like he was caught between us. I took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears that were threatening to spill. I wiped my face again, feeling the humiliation burn through me. Was this how things were going to be from now on? Was this the woman my son had chosen to spend his life with? I looked at Daniel one last time, hoping for some sign of understanding, but there was nothing. No apology, no reassurance. Just silence. It felt like my heart had been shattered into pieces, but all I could do was stand there, humiliated, trying to hold onto whatever dignity I had left. I didn't know it then, but this moment, this humiliation, would be the beginning of everything falling apart. The beginning of me questioning everything I had ever known about my family. The hours after the cake incident were a blur. My face still stung from the embarrassment, but the deeper wound, the one I hadn't seen coming, was the silence from Daniel. I kept waiting for him to come to me, to tell me that he didn't believe Emily, that he'd stand up for me, but he never did. Instead, he disappeared into his new life with her, leaving me to pick up the pieces of my shattered dignity. I sat in the corner of the reception hall, the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses echoing around me. Everyone else seemed to be enjoying the night, while I was frozen in place, replaying the moment in my head. Why did she do that? And why did Daniel just stand there, so distant, so detached? It was as if I was invisible to him, a mere afterthought in the whirlwind of his new marriage. "Are you okay?" A voice startled me, and I turned to see my friend, Linda, standing beside me. She looked concerned, her eyes searching mine for an answer I wasn't sure I had. I swallowed hard, trying to fight back the tears. "I don't know," I whispered, feeling the weight of the question settle deep in my chest. I had given so much of myself for Daniel, for this family, and now it felt like it had all been thrown away in an instant. "I never thought she'd do something like that," Linda murmured, sitting down beside me. "But I saw the way she looked at you. It's like she was waiting for a moment to make you the villain." I nodded, the bitter taste of reality setting in. I had never truly trusted Emily, but I had never imagined she'd be so cruel, so calculating. I had always thought that family would protect each other, that Daniel would protect me. But now I wasn't so sure. I watched Daniel from across the room. He was laughing with a group of friends, his arm wrapped around Emily's waist. She looked radiant, happy in her element. The contrast between the two of them and the emptiness I felt inside was enough to make my stomach churn. How had we gotten here? How had the son I raised become so distant? My mind wandered back to the years of sacrifice, the countless hours I spent making sure Daniel had everything he needed. Late nights, early mornings, everything I did was for him. I had put my own dreams on hold, my own desires, just to be the mother he needed. And yet here I was, an afterthought, a casualty of his new life. Why didn't he stand up for me? I muttered, more to myself than to Linda. She sighed softly, her voice gentle. "Maybe he doesn't see it the way you do. He's caught up in his new life, his new family. He's not thinking about you right now." That was the hardest truth to swallow, that my son wasn't thinking about me. It wasn't that he didn't care. It was just that he cared more about his wife. Emily had found a way to make herself the center of his world, and now I was left on the outside, struggling to find my place. I thought back to all the little moments I had seen between them, her subtle commands, her little glances that sent him rushing to her side. She had wrapped him around her finger without me even noticing, and I hated myself for not seeing it sooner. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. My son had changed. His love for me had been tainted by her influence, and now it seemed like nothing more than a distant memory. Linda squeezed my hand, pulling me out of my spiral. "You can't keep doing this to yourself, you know. You need to think about what's best for you." I looked at her, her kind eyes offering me comfort, but there was something else beneath it all. A truth I wasn't ready to face. "I don't know if I can do that," I said, my voice trembling. "I've given everything for him, for this family, and now I don't even recognize it anymore." Linda didn't answer right away, but when she did, her words hit me harder than I expected. "Maybe it's time to stop giving. Maybe it's time to take back what you've lost." Her words echoed in my mind long after she left. What had I really lost? My relationship with Daniel? My sense of self? I had been so focused on being a mother that I forgot how to be myself. As the night wore on, the joy of the celebration faded into a dull ache in my chest. I wanted to leave, to walk out of this place and never look back, but I stayed. I stayed for the image of my son, still laughing with his wife, still oblivious to the woman who had once been the center of his world, the woman who now felt like a stranger to him. And that's when it hit me. I had been replaced, and I had let it happen. I couldn't take it anymore. The silence, the emptiness, the coldness from Daniel. It had been eating me alive, and today something inside me snapped. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay. I had spent the last few days pacing around my house, feeling like I was suffocating, trapped in a life I no longer recognized. I had to confront them. I had to find out where I stood in their world, even if it meant facing the truth I wasn't ready to hear. I called Daniel earlier that morning, and for the first time in days, he actually answered. I could tell he was busy, probably getting ready for something with Emily. But I wasn't about to let him brush me off again. Daniel, we need to talk, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I don't know, Mom. It's not really a good time, he replied, his tone distant, just like it had been for weeks now. No, it's now or never. We're talking today. I hung up before he could argue, my heart pounding in my chest. It was time. When I arrived at their apartment, the door opened almost immediately, and there she stood, Emily. Her smile was tight, like she already knew why I was there, and she wasn't happy about it. Mother, she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. What a surprise. Daniel's upstairs. Come on in. I stepped past her, my nerves trembling, but my resolve stronger than ever. I didn't want to show weakness. I had to do this. For me. Daniel was sitting on the couch when I walked into the living room. He barely looked up. Hey, Mom, he muttered, barely acknowledging my presence. I stood there for a moment, gathering my thoughts. I had planned for this, rehearsed what I wanted to say. But now that I was here, facing him, facing them, it all felt like it was slipping away. I need to know, Daniel, I started, my voice shaking just a little. Why didn't you stand up for me? Why did you let her humiliate me like that? Daniel finally looked at me, but his eyes didn't show concern or guilt, just a kind of detached confusion. I don't know what you mean, Mom. It was just a cake. Just a cake. I echoed, a bitter laugh escaping my throat. It wasn't just a cake, Daniel. It was everything. You're my son, and you're supposed to stand by me. But you didn't. You chose her. Again. Emily stepped forward, her voice smooth as silk. Oh, don't make this about us, sweetheart. You're making a scene. She said it so calmly, like she was in complete control of the situation, and it made my blood boil. I looked at her, my eyes narrowing. This isn't about you, Emily. This is about my son and me, and the way you've been twisting him, turning him against me. Emily's smile never wavered. I'm not turning him against you. He's just finally choosing his future over your past. It's time for you to let go. I couldn't believe my ears. She didn't even try to pretend she cared. All this time, I had been trying to figure out what was going wrong, but now here it was in front of me. Emily's bitterness, her jealousy. She wanted Daniel all to herself, and I was just an obstacle to her. Is that really how you see it? I asked, my voice cold now. You think I'm just some obstacle? I'm just trying to protect my marriage, okay? She snapped, finally dropping the facade. Maybe if you hadn't been so overbearing, I wouldn't have had to do that. Maybe you should have stayed in your lane. I recoiled at her words. It felt like a slap to the face, even worse than the cake. I had always been there for Daniel, always. And now this woman, this stranger, was telling me that my love, my sacrifices, meant nothing. I turned back to Daniel, my eyes filled with frustration and pain. Is this really what you want, Daniel? To let her push me out of your life like this? He didn't say anything for a long moment. His eyes darted between me and Emily, his face a mask of indecision. He was too scared to stand up to her. That much was clear. I had been replaced. I don't know, Mom, he finally muttered. She's my wife. I have to prioritize her now. And there it was, the knife in my heart, twisted just a little deeper. I felt a tear slip down my cheek, but I wiped it away quickly. I wasn't going to cry in front of them. Not anymore. Fine, I said, my voice trembling with barely contained anger. You've made your choice, but don't expect me to sit around and be your backup when you decide you need me again. I won't be there. I turned on my heel, my heart shattering as I walked out of their apartment. I had no idea what would come next, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let them control me anymore. I was done being the victim. The days after the confrontation felt like a blur. I went through the motions, getting up in the morning, doing the chores, pretending that everything was fine. But deep down, I could feel the weight of betrayal crushing me. It wasn't just the humiliation of that moment, the cake, the smirk on Emily's face. It was the realization that my own son had turned his back on me. I felt invisible, like I no longer mattered in his life. I had never felt more alone. It was hard to get out of bed some mornings. The emptiness of my home echoed in the silence, a reminder of how much had changed. I didn't want to talk to anyone, not even Linda. though I knew she'd been worried about me. I couldn't bear to face her questions, her sympathy. I just needed to be alone. But isolation didn't bring me peace. Instead, it brought memories, memories of better times when Daniel was still the boy who looked up to me, when we shared laughter and secrets, when I was the one he ran to for advice. I pulled out old photo albums, flipping through pages of birthdays, school events, vacations. There was a time when I was everything to him, when I was the one who knew him better than anyone else. Now I was a stranger. I lingered on one particular picture, a shot from his high school graduation. He was beaming, standing beside me with that same proud, innocent look in his eyes. I could still remember the warmth of that day, the pride I felt in watching him walk across the stage. That moment felt so far away now, as if it belonged to a different life. But I couldn't keep dwelling on the past. I had to move forward. I had to find a way to heal, to reclaim the piece of myself that had been lost in all of this. Slowly, I started reaching out to old friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years. I needed to remind myself that I wasn't completely alone in this world. One afternoon, I met up with Mary at the local coffee shop. She had been a close friend back when Daniel was little, before life got too busy, before I became so consumed by being a mother. When I walked into the shop, I was surprised at how comforting it felt to see her familiar face. "Hey there. You look like you've been through the ringer," she said, her voice warm with concern. I nodded, feeling the tears well up. "I don't know what's happened to me, Mary. I thought I had everything figured out, you know? I thought my family was solid. But now, I feel like I've lost everything." Mary gave me a sympathetic look, her hand reaching across the table to hold mine. "It's going to take time, but you have to remember you're strong. You've been through a lot already. This will pass too." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to feel that strength, but it felt so out of reach. Still, it was a start. Talking to her helped, even if just a little. That night, I tried to sleep, but my mind kept returning to Daniel. What had happened to him? Had Emily truly changed him so much, or had he always been this distant? Every time I tried to reach him, he pulled further away. I had no idea how to fix what had broken between us. The next morning, I checked my phone for the first time in days. There were missed calls from Daniel, but I didn't have the energy to respond. I wasn't sure I could handle another conversation where he was more concerned with keeping peace with Emily than acknowledging my pain. I couldn't keep putting myself through that. Meanwhile, I could feel Emily's presence looming over everything. It wasn't just her actions at the wedding. It was the way she seemed to have woven herself so tightly into Daniel's life that there was no room left for anyone else. Her manipulations were starting to show, though Daniel remained blissfully unaware. I could see glimpses of it, his unease in the way he would glance at her when she wasn't looking, the way he started doubting things he never would have questioned before. But he still didn't see it. He didn't see her for who she really was. Emily's grip on him was slipping, though. I could feel it, even if I wasn't around. She was becoming more erratic, more defensive in her behavior. She knew the cracks were starting to show, and she was desperately trying to cover them up. Every move she made seemed calculated, but there was an undercurrent of fear in her eyes. She was losing control, and that made her dangerous. I wondered how long it would take before Daniel would see the truth. Would he be strong enough to break free from her? Or would he remain in her web, too blinded by love or guilt to break free? The question gnawed at me, but I had my own healing to focus on. For the first time, I understood that I couldn't wait for him to come to his senses. I had to focus on myself, on getting my life back, even if it meant letting go of the family I had known. The days blurred into weeks, and the emptiness inside me grew. I had spent so much of my life wrapped up in being a mother, in making sure Daniel was happy, making sure his world was perfect, that I had lost sight of who I was. Now, it felt like I was drowning in the aftermath of everything. His wedding, the humiliation, the lies, and the unbearable weight of betrayal. I could feel it more than ever now. The cold silence between us. Daniel hadn't reached out in days, and when he did, it was always brief, impersonal. He was too absorbed in his new life to care about the wreckage that had been left behind. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone, debating whether or not to call him. Every time I thought about picking it up, something held me back. I had tried so many times before, and every conversation had only left me feeling more invisible, more unheard, more abandoned. I can't keep doing this, I whispered to myself. I had been giving so much, pouring my heart into a relationship that was now breaking apart. But I had given it all away for too long. My time, my energy, my identity. I didn't even know who I was anymore. It was time to stop. Time to stop waiting for him to see me, for him to acknowledge the pain I was going through. I had spent so much of my life trying to be the perfect mother, trying to make everything right for him. But that didn't matter anymore. My son wasn't the boy I once knew. And Emily, she had taken control in ways I never imagined. It wasn't just the wedding, the cake incident, it was everything that had followed. The subtle digs, the manipulations, the distance that had been growing between Daniel and me. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I had to let go. I had to take a step back from this toxic relationship, even if it meant cutting ties with my own flesh and blood. I sat down and stared at the blank message screen on my phone. The words that I had been holding back for so long finally started to spill out. Daniel, I need space. I need time to heal. Please don't contact me until I'm ready. This is not easy for me, but I can't keep going like this. I hesitated for a long moment, but then I hit send. The phone felt heavier in my hands, as though a weight had been lifted. I wasn't waiting for him anymore. I wasn't waiting for anyone. I was doing this for myself. I took a deep breath and set the phone down. It wasn't about revenge or bitterness anymore. It was about healing, about reclaiming myself. I had spent so long trying to make everything work for him, trying to repair what was broken between us, but it wasn't my responsibility anymore. I had to let him figure it out on his own. I had to let go. For the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of hope. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make me believe that I could be whole again. I wasn't going to let this consume me any longer. I spent the rest of the day in quiet solitude, doing things for myself, reading, taking walks, enjoying the silence of my own home. It wasn't much, but it was a start toward independence, a start toward healing. That evening, I received a message from Daniel. I could feel the tension in my chest as I read it, expecting some sort of plea for forgiveness, a justification for everything that had happened. Mom, I don't understand. Why are you doing this? I need you. I stared at the words for a long time, my heart twisting. I could hear the confusion in his message, but there was no acknowledgement of the pain I had been through, no understanding of why I had taken this step. It was still all about him, still all about his needs, his confusion, his discomfort. I took a deep breath and set the phone down again. I couldn't respond. Not yet. Not when he still couldn't see me. I had made my decision and I couldn't go back on it. I couldn't keep waiting for him to choose me. As I sat back in my chair, the weight of my decision finally settled in. I had let go, and it hurt. It hurt more than I ever thought it would. But it was the first step toward reclaiming my life, toward finding myself again. The first few weeks after I cut ties with Daniel were harder than I could have imagined. There were nights when I wondered if I had made the right choice, if perhaps I had been too quick to shut the door on him. But then, the silence that followed gave me space to breathe, space to think. I had spent so much of my life putting others first that I had forgotten how to take care of myself. It was time to change that. I started small, filling my days with things I hadn't done in years, things that made me feel alive. I picked up old hobbies that had been buried under the weight of motherhood. Painting, gardening, and reading books I had left untouched on my shelf. I found myself waking up each day with a renewed sense of purpose, as though the world had opened up again. One afternoon, I even joined a yoga class. It felt strange at first, my body stiff, my mind racing, but as I closed my eyes and focused on my breath, I could feel the tension leaving my body. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't thinking about Daniel or Emily. I was thinking about me, about what I needed to heal. I also began to reconnect with old friends, some of whom I had drifted apart from over the years. They welcomed me with open arms, and their support helped me realize something important. I wasn't alone. I had people who cared about me, people who saw me for who I truly was. And that was enough. As I focused on my own growth, I began to hear little things from mutual friends, whispers about Daniel and Emily. At first, I didn't want to know. I had made my choice to step back, and I didn't want to be caught in the middle of their mess. But curiosity got the best of me, and I listened. It wasn't long before I started to hear the cracks in their marriage, things I hadn't expected to hear. Emily's behavior was becoming more erratic, more controlling. She was isolating Daniel from his friends, manipulating him into cutting ties with people who cared about him. And as for Daniel, he had begun to pull away from her. I could feel it in the way he spoke about her when we had brief, awkward exchanges. The warmth that once filled his voice when he spoke of her had faded, replaced by an emptiness that broke my heart. I wasn't sure how long it would take for him to truly see her for what she was. I wasn't even sure I wanted to be part of that process. But deep down, I knew that the moment of clarity would come for him eventually. He just needed to experience it for himself. And sure enough, it did. One day, I got a call from Daniel. I could hear the strain in his voice, the way he stumbled over his words. He didn't know how to begin. "Mom, I think I'm starting to understand why you've been so upset," he said quietly. "There's been things with Emily. Things I didn't see before." I closed my eyes, trying to keep my emotions in check. "What do you mean, Daniel?" "She's been so controlling, so manipulative. I thought I was doing the right thing, trying to make her happy. But now I see the damage she's caused." His voice cracked, and I could hear the regret in every syllable. "I've lost so much friends, family, because I let her push everyone away." I took a deep breath, my heart aching for him. But at the same time, I knew this was his journey. He had to come to this realization on his own, just like I had to find my own way out of the pain. "It's not too late to fix things," I said softly, keeping my voice steady. "But you need to make a choice, Daniel. A choice that's good for you, not just for her." "I don't know if I can fix it," he admitted, his voice filled with guilt. "I've made so many mistakes." "You have to forgive yourself first," I said. "You can't change the past, but you can take control of your future. I'm here whenever you're ready." We didn't talk much longer. There was so much he still needed to process, and I knew he wasn't ready to hear everything yet. But I felt a small sense of relief. For the first time in months, I saw a glimmer of the son I used to know. The son who would come to me for advice, who trusted me to help him through life's hardest moments. In the meantime, Emily's grip on Daniel started to slip even further. Her behavior, her need for control, was becoming more and more transparent. People had begun to notice. Friends were stepping back from her, and even her own family was growing distant. But Emily, in her desperation, only tightened her hold on Daniel, pushing him further away. She had become a woman who would stop at nothing to maintain the illusion of control, but the cracks were starting to show. And it was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. I watched from a distance, still uncertain about whether I should reach out to Daniel again. But I knew one thing for sure. Karma was playing its part, and Emily was going to have to face the consequences of her actions. I had found peace in my own life, and no matter what happened next, I was determined to hold on to it. I wasn't going to let her or anyone else take it away from me. Months had passed since I made the decision to step away from Daniel and Emily. I focused on myself, rebuilding my life piece by piece, letting go of the bitterness that had weighed me down for so long. I had no idea what was happening in their world, and frankly, I didn't care. My peace had become my priority. But life has a way of pulling you back into the story, even when you think you've written the final chapter. One evening, as I was finishing my dinner, I received a message from Daniel. My heart skipped, the familiar ache returning for a moment, but I refused to let it control me. I had moved on, and I wasn't about to let a single text undo the work I had done to find myself again. "Mom, can we talk? Emily is really struggling. She wants to apologize for everything." I stared at the message, my hand hovering over the phone. Emily, apologizing. I couldn't help but laugh softly to myself. After everything, after how she had treated me, how she had manipulated Daniel and alienated me from him, it seemed too little, too late. But I agreed to meet. I had no intention of letting her back into my life, but for Daniel's sake, I agreed to hear her out. Perhaps it was the last step in my healing process, finally putting everything behind me. When I arrived at the cafe where we agreed to meet, Emily was already seated, her hands nervously clasped in front of her. She looked different, darker, older, more worn out than the woman I had once seen as cold but collected. Her eyes were red, her makeup smudged, and there was a desperation in her posture that hadn't been there before. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, her voice shaky. I sat down across from her, my expression unreadable. "Let's make this quick, Emily. I'm not sure what you expect, but I'm not interested in drama." She nodded, taking a deep breath before speaking. "I know I've done a lot of things to hurt you, and Daniel, and I deeply regret it. I've realized now how much I've lost. I was wrong to push you away, wrong to make you feel like you didn't matter. And I've hurt him too. Daniel doesn't even know what's happening anymore. He's not the person I thought he was." I studied her, feeling no sympathy, only a dull ache for the woman who had once been so determined to control everything around her. "You did this to yourself, Emily," I said quietly, my voice calm but firm. "Your manipulation, your jealousy, it wasn't just about me. You've done this to Daniel too. You're losing him, and it's no one's fault but your own." Her hands trembled slightly as she reached across the table, as though trying to grasp for something to hold on to. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her eyes welling up. I never meant for it to go this far. I was scared of losing him. I never thought you would leave, that you'd stop caring. But now I see what I've done." I stared at her for a long moment, watching the woman who had once been so confident and assured crumble in front of me. There was nothing left of the woman I'd feared. There was only regret, and it felt hollow. She was trying to make amends, but her words were too late, too empty for me to accept. "I've moved on," I said, my voice steady. "This apology, this attempt to fix things, it's all for you, not for me. I've healed, Emily. I've found peace, and you're not a part of that anymore. You've done enough damage, and I won't let you drag me back into your mess." Her face twisted with frustration, tears spilling over her cheeks. "Please, I know I've hurt you. But can't we start over? Please, just let me try. For him, for us." I shook my head. "No, Emily. You've had your chances. You've used them all. Now, it's time to face the consequences of your actions. Not just with me, but with Daniel. You've pushed him too far. I don't know if he'll ever forgive you." She sat back, her face pale, as if the realization was finally hitting her. She had nothing left. Her control, her manipulation. It had all unraveled, and there was no one left to hold on to. No one left to fix it. I stood up, ready to leave. "I've made peace with everything, Emily. I suggest you do the same." As I walked out of the cafe, I felt a strange sense of relief. The woman who had once tried to tear my world apart was finally getting a taste of the consequences of her actions. She had no more power over me, and I wasn't going to let her hold me in her web any longer. Daniel's message that night was filled with guilt and regret. He apologized for not seeing the truth sooner, but it was clear he still didn't fully understand the damage Emily had done. But I was done. I couldn't fix this for him. I had to let him walk his own path, just as I had walked mine. And in that moment, I knew that my healing wasn't tied to him anymore. It wasn't tied to anyone. It was mine and mine alone. The sun hung low in the sky as I made my way to the park. My footsteps were steady, calm. It had taken months to get here, to this moment, this meeting, where I would finally face them again. I had no idea what to expect, no idea how it would unfold. All I knew was that I was no longer the woman who had walked away from them months ago. I wasn't broken anymore. When I arrived, I saw Daniel standing by the bench, looking out over the lake. He turned when he heard my footsteps, his expression a mixture of hope and uncertainty. I could see the guilt in his eyes, and a part of me felt for him. But another part of me, one that had grown stronger with each passing day, knew this was the last time we would meet like this. The last time I would let him pull me back into his world. "Mom," Daniel said softly, his voice filled with regret. "I'm glad you came." I nodded, folding my arms across my chest, keeping a distance between us. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady. Emily stepped out from behind the trees, her face drawn and pale, as though she hadn't slept in days. She avoided my gaze at first, but I could feel her eyes flicker toward me, the same mix of guilt and frustration in them. "I know I've done a lot of wrong," she said quietly, her voice thin. "And I'm sorry for what happened, for everything." I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I took a deep breath, letting the air fill my lungs before letting it out slowly. I was calm, finally calm. "I don't need your apology," I said, my voice firm. "I've already forgiven you, whether you realize it or not. But that doesn't mean I'll let you back into my life." Daniel looked at me, his brow furrowed. "Mom, please. I've made so many mistakes. I know I hurt you and No, Daniel," I interrupted, my gaze unwavering. "You didn't just make mistakes. You let her take control. You chose her over me. And it's not just about what happened at the wedding. It's everything. The way you ignored me, the way you let her manipulate you. You're not the same person anymore, and that's not something I can fix for you." He winced at my words, his face falling. "I didn't want to hurt you. I don't know what happened." "I do," I said, my voice softening. "You lost yourself in her, and now you're paying the price for it. But that's not my burden to carry anymore." Emily stepped forward, her eyes pleading with me. "Please, can we just fix this? I never meant to hurt you." I was scared and "Stop," I said, holding up my hand. "It's too late. You've done too much. And Daniel, he's caught in the middle of it all. You both are. But I can't keep putting myself in this position. I can't keep waiting for you to choose me. I've spent too much of my life being second to you." Her eyes flickered with a hint of regret, but there was something more in her gaze now. Something darker. I didn't realize what I was doing to him. I thought I was protecting our marriage. "You weren't protecting anything," I said, my tone steady. "You were controlling him, and now you've lost him. And I've lost him too." There was a long silence between us, the weight of everything unsaid hanging heavy in the air. I looked at Daniel one last time, his eyes filled with regret and confusion. But I could see it now, he was starting to understand. Slowly, painfully, he was starting to see the truth. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said finally, his voice small, vulnerable. "I never should have let this happen. I was too blinded by everything." I gave him a small, sad smile. "It's not too late for you, Daniel, but it's too late for us. You've made your choice, and I've made mine. And I can't go back." Emily looked between us, her face crumpling as she realized the same thing. She had done too much damage, and there was no going back for her either. "I wish things could have been different," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I never wanted this." I took a step back, shaking my head. "It's not just what you wanted, Emily. It's what you did. And now we all have to live with the consequences." For a long moment, none of us spoke. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of the coming evening, and I realized that this was the end. The end of everything I had known, everything I had held on to for so long. But for the first time, I didn't feel sorrow. I didn't feel anger. I felt free. "I have to go," I said quietly, turning to leave. "Goodbye, Daniel. Goodbye, Emily." I didn't look back as I walked away. I didn't need to. I had reclaimed my peace, and that was all I needed. I stood by the window, looking out at the horizon as the sun dipped below the trees, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The days had passed in a blur, each one a step further from the woman I had been, from the life I had once known. And for the first time in so long, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. The pain of my past was still there, a faint echo in the corners of my mind, but it no longer consumed me. It no longer defined who I was. I had finally let go of the anger, the hurt, the resentment that had held me captive for so long. I had forgiven them, but more importantly, I had forgiven myself. I glanced down at the small journal in my hands. It had been a gift from an old friend, a simple leather-bound notebook where I began to write, to process my emotions. At first, it had been full of sadness and confusion, but over time, the words became lighter. And now, as I flipped through the pages, I saw something I hadn't noticed before: the growth, the strength that had emerged from the ashes. I wasn't the same woman who had cried in the silence of her empty home, who had let her son's choices control her. No, I had rebuilt myself piece by piece until I was stronger than I had ever been before. It hadn't been easy. There were days when I missed him, when the hole in my heart felt too big to ignore. But with each passing day, I grew more certain that I had made the right choice. It wasn't about punishing him. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, my sense of self. And now I was free. The phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me from my thoughts. I checked the screen, seeing Daniel's name. My heart did a strange little flip, but I didn't hesitate. I knew what I needed to do. I took a deep breath before pressing the button to answer. "Mom," he said, his voice tentative. "I just wanted to check in. I know I've messed up, and I don't know if we'll ever fix everything, but I'm sorry. I hope you're doing okay." I smiled softly, feeling no anger, only a quiet acceptance. "I'm doing fine, Daniel. I'm doing more than fine. I'm finding my own way." He sighed, and I could hear the weight of his guilt in that simple sound. "I should have seen it sooner, Mom. I should have stood by you. But I was blind. I'm sorry." "I know you are," I said, my voice calm. "But you're learning, Daniel. You're seeing the truth now, and that's all that matters. I hope you find your way too. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I want you to know you're always going to be my mom," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. "I'll always be here for you, Daniel. But I can't be the person you need me to be anymore. You need to find that for yourself." He didn't respond right away, and for a moment there was only silence between us. But this time it was a peaceful silence, the kind that comes after the storm has passed. "I understand," he said softly. "Thank you." I hung up the phone, feeling a strange sense of finality. The words had been said, the wounds had been addressed. There was no more left to say, no more left to prove. Turning back to the window, I smiled to myself. The world outside seemed different now, brighter, more alive. I could feel the promise of new beginnings in the air. I had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in years, I was excited to find out. The past would always be a part of me, but it no longer had a hold on me. I had let go, and in doing so I had found freedom. I had found peace, and that was all I needed. As I walked out the door ready to face whatever came next, I felt a quiet strength within me. I was no longer defined by anyone else's choices. I was no longer the woman who had been left behind. I was me, whole, independent, and at peace. The future was mine to embrace.